With the breaking news of Mbappe potentially being out for matchday 1, it has completely changed the dynamic of my matchday 1 team, and I had to record this video to update you with my current plan. So as always, make sure to drop a like on the video and of course smash that subscribe button for daily Euro fantasy content. Enough waffling, we have so much to talk about. Let's get into today's video. So with Mbappe being like 77% owned in the game, this is probably one of the biggest players that could have potentially got injured, ill, whatever it is, going into matchday 1, because it has left us with such a tough decision. Now I'm going to pop up here, obviously, what we have seen regarding Kylian Mbappe, and it has been reported by The Athletic, and the main quote is that Mbappe and Kingsley Coman missed out on training on Thursday, which of course was yesterday at the time of recording, ahead of their game against Austria on Monday. So it's worth noting they still have the weekend to recover. Now, when you actually check out the article, it says that Mbappe took part in indoor training, which to me obviously is not good news that he hasn't been involved in full team training. Kingsley Coman, on the other hand, completely missed out of training, but of course we're not really looking at Kingsley Coman. So what does this mean for our Euro fantasy teams? Well, obviously, Mbappe not training with the team isn't great, but because he's such a talisman in that side, and it is a really tricky game against Austria, I think they are going to do everything in their power to get Mbappe onto that field. But we do need to remember as well, the whole group for France is very, very difficult. So what is that going to do, starting Mbappe if he isn't 100% fit? Could that have repercussions later on in the campaign for them? And also, we haven't actually got clarification right now on what it is for Mbappe. We know there is a sick bug going around, which obviously has ruled out Kingsley Coman. So is that the same for Mbappe, or maybe does he have a small general injury? So hopefully we'll get some news between now and that deadline later on this evening. But I had to update you regarding this Mbappe news because it is the biggest player that could be a potential doubt for this campaign. And of course, with that news, it has opened up an opportunity for maybe us to be a little bit different with our teams, which I am going to show you because I've built an Mbappe team without him that I actually really do like and I am considering. Now, there is some other injury news that we need to cover off in this preview video. The other one is going to be that it's taken from the Netherlands training. Now, we all had the assumption that Denzel Dumfries was absolutely locked into the team and Frimpong was a major doubt. However, you can see this tweet here from an account that has been monitoring the Netherlands activity during this Euro pre-season campaign, however we want to call it. And you can see here that Denzel Dumfries does not feature in that team, similar to that of Xavi Simons. So it looks like they're going for different combinations in this team. One includes Frimpong, one includes Simons and Dumfries. And unfortunately, the team that are wearing the bibs that are suggesting are going to be the starting 11 didn't include Dumfries. And if you tuned into my previous video, you will know I had Mbappe and I had Denzel Dumfries. So if this is the case, of course, I do need to make changes in my team because two big players who are a big investment need to come out this side. Now, the other thing that I do need to obviously raise is the flag on Theo Hernandez. Now, I haven't actually seen any update regarding him, but on the actual official game, it says that he's doubtful. Now, it'd be great if you guys could let me know in the comments about this, because I've scoured the internet. I can't really see any reason why he is a potential doubt. So from what I know, he is a doubt on the game, but not really that much of a doubt in real life. So again, let me know in the comments. But to recap, Mbappe a potential doubt, Dumfries a potential doubt for the Netherlands team from rotation, and Theo Hernandez is a little bit unknown right now. If there are any more injuries, please do let me know in the comments, but let's get into my team to show you what it could look like without Kylian Mbappe if this news becomes even bigger. So for anybody that tuned into my video yesterday, thanks again for all the support. This was my team, and I say was because there might be a few changes that need to be made because, as I mentioned, the status on Mbappe and Denzel Dumfries, I'm not jumping any gun right now, but we do need to make some preliminary changes if the worst does happen. So this is how the team's looking. Of course, my chip strategy was to use both chips in the group stages, so I'm basically just building a team for one game week in isolation. I really do like that strategy because it just means it's a bit more fun, it's a bit more aggressive. You have the opportunity to really go in on the best players each and every game week. You're taking some risks later on, obviously, if the favourites do get knocked out, and you might actually have 6 to 9 players who are in your squad that get knocked out. But sometimes you need to take risks at some point in this game. And I'm still leaning towards that chip strategy. But what I also do think is worthwhile is maybe building a team, you could do this, where it is great for game week 1, good for game week 2, and you just hedge your bets. And then what you can do is come game week 2, you can either not use a chip or be forced to use a chip. So being a bit flexible probably is the direction to go in right now with all these doubts about certain players. Now, This is my team, still really happy with it, and I still currently have this team. But as we stated, if Mbappe is going to be ruled out, then I think going without Mbappe just makes complete sense for matchday 1. The big issue with that is then you're doing two things. You either allocate a free transfer to bring in Mbappe in matchday 2, because I don't think there's a world where you're going to go without him for 2 match days in a row, or you just completely commit to a chip strategy of using both chips in the group stages. And if that is the case, then of course you only have to go 1 game week without Mbappe, and then he comes straight into your team for matchday 2, in your team for matchday 3 when you use the following chip, and probably going to be in your team throughout that period when France go on and inevitably win the Euros. So I just want to move on to a team which I've built without Kylian Mbappe if he is ruled out, because we do need to plan for these things. So let's get into that. But this is my team currently while we have the doubts of those 2 players. So here is the current draft without Kylian Mbappe and Denzel Dumfries if the worst fears actually do come true regarding both of those. And I cannot lie to you, this team here is actually way more exciting in my eyes. If we're going for the chip strategy of being super aggressive in the group stages, I feel like this team is the ultimate aggressive team because it's going for all of the high upside players, and you're obviously swinging against some of the popular picks in the game. So just to cover off some of the differences in this team, I've changed the goalkeepers. I've gone up to Costa of Portugal. I think he is the best goalkeeper in the game, but in my previous draft, I couldn't squeeze him in because of the funds. I can get him in this team, and it means Cancelo coming out of the team, which I obviously think is not a good move, but what I've been able to do is bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, we have no guarantees that he's starting, but it also does sound like in the predicted England 11, he could be playing as the midfielder. And we can only think he's going to be a creative midfielder in that team against the Serbian low block. And if they're going to open up that defence, I imagine Trent is going to be at the heartbeat of all those things and on a lot of set pieces. So I really do like Trent just for matchday 1. As I said, if you're building this draft, you have to play a chip in matchday 2 because once Mbappe comes back, you are going to be panicking to be changing your team. So you basically are tying yourself down to the strategy that I mentioned of chips in the group stages. So Trent for 1 game week, I absolutely love it. Been able to upgrade Wout due to QPA, I believe. Sounds like he is going to be starting at left back or left wing back in that Belgium team. Again, I don't love him for 2 game weeks, but for 1 game week in isolation, I think he's a brilliant upside pick. Now, based on what we saw about the Netherlands bib situation in the starting 11, I've simply done a sideways move of Dumfries to Frimpong. Again, that is probably equally risky, but based on the information that we have, I feel a bit more inclined to go towards Frimpong, as I think he is a brilliant option if you want to go there. DeMarco and Mittelstadt obviously stick in the team. Moving into the midfielders, and again, I really like what I've done here. So Eriksen, Jorginho, and Bruno Fernandes have stayed. I would love to upgrade Jorginho to a 6.5 million midfielder, but realistically, I just can't really do it with this team. So I've downgraded Florian Wirtz to Gundogan. Now, the reason why I've done that is because I think Wirtz is the better Germany option, but I don't think there is huge differences between the two in Gundogan and Florian Wirtz. And of course, Gundogan is on penalties. So just doing that downgrade has enabled me to upgrade Szoboszlai to Leandro Trossard with that brilliant opening game against Slovakia. After doing a bit more research on Belgium, I'm really, really excited to see this team in the competition. I would love that to be Kevin De Bruyne, but I can't really get there right now, obviously, with the funds. I think Trossard is a brilliant alternative. And again, I'm looking to target the best teams in this competition for match day 1. And Trossard definitely falls in that bracket. So I think Szoboszlai is better for 2 game weeks, but for 1 game week in isolation, I prefer having Leandro Trossard. Now, of course, in the front line, I'm going to keep Lukaku and Kane, but the obvious downgrade is going to be Mbappe to Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. Remember, Mbappe and Lukaku play on the same day. So if you go for the first team that I showed you, Lukaku, Kane and Mbappe, you're obviously going to captain Mbappe in match day 4, I believe, or 3. So Lukaku is just in your team, just be there and obviously get some of the points. You're not getting the real upside of captaining him as well. Whereas if you go for this team, you're going to be forced to captain Lukaku with that brilliant game against Slovakia. And maybe that is actually a blessing in disguise. You're not having the fear of not having Mbappe as your captain. So taking him out of the team altogether might actually be a bit more exciting for you to put the captaincy on him. And realistically, if I said to you right now, you don't have Mbappe, but you got Cristiano Ronaldo, that is not a bad downgrade at all. I expect him to start the game against Czech Republic. Portugal are one of the best goal-scoring teams in this tournament. They've proven it in all of the qualifying stages and in their most recent friendlies. And the more I look at the team, the more I think to myself, let's just go without Kylian Mbappe for one match day, knowing that he'll definitely be in my team for every single game week beyond this point. And I do think Austria are an informed team coming into this Euro. So right now, this is actually what I'm leaning towards in my draft. Let me show you what it looks like in terms of the starting 11, and then we'll cover off those final points that you need to know going into match day 1. So just to give you a clear idea on how that starting 11 would look going into match day 1, which of course is today. Exciting times. So obviously we're benching the players that play later on in the match day. That includes my 3 Portuguese players, and Ducupe, I believe, plays on the 17th. So in terms of what I would do with this team in terms of captaincy, I would look to captain my German player, and I actually do think Mittelstadt is actually a great option now I think about it, because in terms of upside, he's an attacking fullback and also the potential for clean sheets, so maybe Mittelstadt is the route to go for. Then of course outside of this, we removed Szoboszlai in the team, which would have been the captain on the 15th of June. However, I do think DeMarco against Albania is actually a better captaincy option, so if Gundogan doesn't deliver, DeMarco is a great pick on the 2nd day. On the 3rd day, it's going to be nobody else other than Harry Kane. That was always going to be an automatic lock against Serbia. But as I mentioned, on the 17th of June, whereas beforehand you'd had a choice between Lukaku and Mbappe, and trust me, you would have gone on Mbappe, going for Lukaku against Slovakia just feels so much more of an exciting pick going into that match day. And finally, if all things else fail, you have Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes as captaincy choices for your team. I probably would lean towards Cristiano Ronaldo just for that nostalgic pick, but I really do like this team. As I mentioned, you are completely tying yourself down to a chip strategy of using all your chips in the group stages. But if you are going to go down this, you have to be aggressive, even with that match day 1 squad. And I look at this and think, I do not want Trent, Frimpong, even Eriksen beyond match day 1. But for one match day in isolation, I think you are really chasing the upside with this team. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, obviously, this point in the video was to cover off all the last minute things you needed to know. I just wanted to quickly show you, I've shown this in previous videos, the chip strategy options available to you. There are a lot of other chip strategies. You can use all your chips in the knockout stages if you want to, but I think the general idea is that you either do one of these 2 things. You either go safe, you play your limitless in match day 3, which you have to do regardless, and then match day 5 you play your wild card, so that if any favourites do get knocked out, you have your wild card available to bring in those teams that remain in the competition. But of course you have a smaller pool of players to select from in match day 5. Option 2, the aggressive approach, is that you use all your chips in the group stages. I really do like this because, as I stated, you're basically getting 4 free hits in a row, which is great. The only thing I would say is the match day 2 team that you're going to build for 1 week that much better than what you could build for 2 game weeks worth? I don't know if that is the case, but I am leaning more towards option 2 right now. Problem, you obviously taking a risk. If those favourites do get knocked out later on in the competition and you don't have a chip available, then you might be using points hits to get basically players who feature in the competition still. So that is a bit of an issue, but the reason why I like option 2 is because you're just going with the odds. Like, realistically, the favourites are the favourites for a reason. Yes, shocks do happen in the competition, but am I expecting loads of shocks in the knockout? Not really. Historically, the favourites usually do progress. So from an actual odds perspective, option 2 makes a lot more sense. The only thing I would say is, and obviously it's a bit of a cop-out, just being flexible in general is always an option. Now, the problem with the team that I just showed you is you are really committed to using a chip in match day 2, because I wouldn't want the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Frimpong, Eriksen in my team for match day 2, even someone like a Jorginho. So it isn't really well balanced, but you definitely could build a flexible team where it looks good for match day 1, it looks good for match day 2, but equally, if you get to match day 2 and things arise, you can just pull the trigger on a chip. So maybe being flexible with your team is the route to go, but I also think you're just missing out on being completely aggressive in match day 1. And to be honest with you, if you haven't noticed already, I play FPL very, very seriously, but with the Euro Fantasy game, it's a great opportunity to be just a little bit more fun with it, and I'm kind of leaning towards that right now. So before we wrap things up on this video, I just wanted to go through basically a matchday 1 checklist for you. Just a few last minute notes. They're definitely going to be more, and I probably will put them in the comment section of what I remember, and I'll pin it. So make sure you do check that out in the comments. But these are my last few things, last few notes for you. So bench the players that are featuring later in matchday 1. Don't forget to sub them in. So basically, if you have players that kick off on the 17th or 18th of June, bench them, because if you start them and let's say you've got Germany players on your bench, if Germany play, you can't then sub them into your starting 11. That is then locked onto your bench. So make sure you have it where the players who kick off earlier in the match day are in your starting 11, and then you can have the choice to sub in those players that play later on. Make sure you have at least one captain option available in all 5 of the days. So check out all the fixtures. But the important thing is that have a Germany player for match day 1, have an Italian player for match day 2, have an English player for match day 3, have a French or Belgian player for match day 4, and have a Portuguese player for match day 5. It just gives you that opportunity that if you need to, you can put the captaincy on another player. Remember, if you were, for example, changing the Germany captain to DeMarco the following day, you can't go back to the Germany player. You are kind of then locked in. Avoid 5.5-6 million expensive goalkeepers. We have too many good goalkeepers at 4.5 and 5. 2 5 million goalkeepers are going to include Costa and Pickford. The 2 4.5 is going to include Lunin and Verbruggen. Go for your combinations, but the big thing is you cannot go for Pickford and Verbruggen because they both play on the same day in match day 1, and that just isn't a good use of your selection. Remember, the match day 1 deadline is today, but the big thing about it is that it's 8 p.m. UK time, but the deadline is at 8 p.m, the same time as the kickoff. So unlike FPL, which is an hour and a half before the first kickoff, we will get the Germany team sheet out. So if there are any surprises, then you can be adaptive and change your team dependent on that. For example, if Mittelstadt randomly wasn't featuring. So be aware of that deadline. It isn't an hour and a half before the Germany game. It is on the kickoff. Decide the chip strategy before the deadline. That is so important because, as I stated, really locking in your chip strategy can mean you being really aggressive or be a more longer term planning. And as I stated, you can be flexible, but you do miss out on some of those great punts for the 1 game week in isolation. Last 2 things. Join the FPL Fan Mini League if you haven't already. There's over 2,000 people. The league code is here. Make sure you do so. And if you're enjoying it, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. It'll be awesome to have you. That's meant to be a smiley face at the end there, but it just looks really, really weird. So if you are enjoying the content throughout this campaign, it'd be awesome to have you on board. And obviously, this channel is mainly FPL, so you're just getting ahead of the curve for when that game does drop. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's final team selection thoughts, basically. The Mbappe and Dumfries news has thrown a big curveball. The big thing, I will be doing a deadline live stream tonight. So I will confirm my team, and of course, I will try and post it in the community section of the YouTube page as well. But thanks so much for the support over this pre-season for the Euros. We'll obviously be continuing throughout the actual Euros. Can't wait to do so. If you haven't already, drop a like, smash the subscribe button, and have an amazing day. And we'll talk very soon. Take care. Cheers.